Hi, I'm Ada Rose Cannon from Samsung Internet,
And I'm Dan Applequist from Samsung Internet.
and we're going to talk to you about.
Samsung Internet. So,
All
you.
right, I'll begin. So, Samsung Internet, it's an Android web browser for any Android smartphone. So it's not limited to Samsung phones, but it is slightly better on Samsung phones, but then again, it isn't everything.
Yeah, that's true. We're here in Samsung KX in London to talk a little bit about Samsung Internet as well. So we're going to be very
On brand today.
on brand today. Exactly, exactly.
We're not
right.
normally quite so Samsung, but they are kind enough to host us today.
Yes.
So why
Right.
not?
So how about what else can we say about Samsung Internet?
You can find it in the Play Store or the Galaxy Store. We're actually a surprisingly big browser. Like, I tend to refer to Samsung as like the little giant, because we're huge. Like, for mobile browsing, we have been like 5 and 10% in most countries. Some markets that goes up to like 12%, like for example Germany, and in South Korea that goes all the way up to 25%. So like our market saturation is huge, and
And that's all mobile browsing.
yeah, that's all mobile browsing.
Yeah.
So like 5 to 10% doesn't sound like massive until you remember it's 5 to 10% of all mobile web browsing.
Yeah.
Just all of it. Like
Yeah.
so we start talking about hundreds of millions of users.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. Like,
And that was like when we started off in 2016, building the team up, and Samsung Internet was relatively unknown. I kicked things off by writing a blog post, Samsung Internet, the browser you haven't heard of yet, the big browser you haven't heard of yet, right? And that kind of, now more people have heard about it, thanks partly to our efforts, but yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of our efforts have been trying to differentiate Samsung Internet from Chrome in a lot of analytics work, because we are a Chromium browser. We're based on a fork of Chromium, we're not just a wrapper around default Chromium. Like, we maintain our own fork, and so getting that separated out from Chrome in web browser in browser analytics data was a big part of our early efforts. And I think that's really helped raise awareness.
And getting Samsung Internet listed in places where developers go to find information about browsing, to find information about web capabilities and functions and APIs and stuff like that. That was another thing that we did very early on.
Yeah,
so.
That was really important. And I think it's really important to say that developers should really consider testing on Samsung Internet as part of their standard testing routine for the websites they build. Because, as I said earlier, we are a fork of Chrome, not just a wrapper. And so there are differences between us and mainline Chrome. Like the browser version, like the Chromium engine will be running in Samsung Internet, will be different to the engine version you'll find in Chrome, because it's an entirely separate engine. We usually lag like maybe about 6 weeks behind Chrome in terms of version number of the engine, and we tend to go up in jumps because obviously we can't maintain a one-to-one engine mapping, because we also have to add our own improvements and ensure device integration. And so we tend to focus more on some of the newer APIs, which we'll be particularly focusing on.
Right. And the other thing to mention, I think, is that we have a beta, which is available also in the Play Store and in the Galaxy Store.
Yeah.
And that usually is about a month ahead of our stable release. So that's another kind of differentiator that we have, I would say, from all the other kind of Chromium-based browsers that are out there. We have a beta, we have an active developer program that Ada and I are part of. And what else can we say? I mean, well, from I guess the other important thing to say about our Chromium is that we are not just consumers of Chromium, we are participants in the Chromium community. So our engineering team in Korea, in the US, in India, are contributing back into Chromium.
One of the things I used to like saying was that we're the second biggest contributor to Chromium after Google. Unfortunately, when Edge started using Chromium as well, they did overtake us.
Yeah,
but we are still one of the major contributors into
You could say
Chromium
they edged
network.
us out.
They did edge us out, yeah.
Or you could not say that. Okay. So what else do? We've talked a little bit about our team, our developer advocacy group.
Oh, actually, one thing we should mention before we move on
Yeah.
is like we've asked developers to like test their websites in browsers, but what's the best way for developers to give feedback to us when they found an error or a bug in our implementation of Chromium?
Well, there are a couple of different feedback channels that we have. First of all, they can go onto our forum, which is linked off of developer.samsung.com/internet. They can always tweet us, or our DMs are open on at Samsung Internet, and also
I'm at Ada Rose Cannon and
at Torgo. And so you can always tweet members of our developer advocacy team directly. Or you can send email, plain old email to browser@samsung.com.
I think that's probably the best way to reach us.
Yeah.
If you've got, like, in terms of just submitting a bug report, because that pretty much goes straight onto the bug tracker for Samsung Internet. You won't get, like, an email response back, but it will be seen by the developers and will probably be the fastest way to go from encountering an issue to getting it fixed.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing I think to mention about testing is that we have a partnership with BrowserStack. You can always go into BrowserStack and test on Samsung and other devices with Samsung Internet if you don't have access to a Samsung phone, although of course we encourage you to get a Samsung device or to simply load Samsung Internet on any other Android device.
There's also the Samsung Test Lab, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Which is also a great way to test. So there's definitely no shortages of ways to test your website with Samsung Internet.
Right.
Of course, we also work with Selenium and standard browser developer tools.
Yeah.
So like you can test in us exactly the same way as you would test in other Chromium browsers.
Right, right. So, and in terms of, moving on to kind of like what our team does, right? So, and we started off, as we kind of talked about, trying to make a name for Samsung Internet, trying to make, I think we've been pretty successful in terms of like, you can go to Can I Use and see us, you can go to MDN pages and see us in the browser compatibility data. You can see Samsung Internet in Google Analytics and in browser stats. You know, you're increasingly wherever browsers are used, or wherever you see a list of kind of browsers, you're going to see Samsung Internet there.
But in case anyone watching this does have a tool they regularly use which doesn't seem to be separating out Samsung Internet from Chrome, please let us know, and then we will reach out to them and try to get them to separate us out and distinguish us.
So the other kinds of stuff that we've been working on is we blog, you know, we write code. The team is essentially an engineering team. We write code, we write test code, we write example code. We're always writing stuff that kind of shows some new capability, like
actually, yeah, because the beginning of this talk has made us seem more like a B2B team, but actually everyone on the team is an engineer. Like we were all long time like veteran web developers who've been doing it for like, well, since the web was extremely early, or
in my case, since before there was a web.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, you got in there.
I got in there early, right?
I got in there before CSS was a thing, which I think is pretty early.
That's pretty good. That's good. That's But we
yeah.
also do, so yeah, speaking of CSS, we do standards work. Ada,
Yeah.
you're doing some standards work.
Yeah, so I work in the standards for the W3C immersive web groups. So these are the groups that are standardizing the Web XR APIs. These are the APIs to let you do virtual reality and augmented reality in the web. I also build demos. Like, that's probably what I do. Like, what takes up most of my time is building demos using new APIs to try and push the web further than it's been before.
Yeah.
And then write blog posts to explain to developers how these demos work, how they can also do similar things.
Yeah.
And then I write and give talks about those blog posts usually.
And I co-chair a group in W3C called the Technical Architecture Group. We also have been active, Laura has been active in the device posture API and the devices and sensors. So we tend to get involved in standards work where there's a strategic reason for us to do so because it relates to some kind of engineering investment from Samsung.
Yeah, so like, for example, Samsung has not recently, for a few years now, been really focused on the folding and flipping devices. And and so a big part of the work Laura's been doing has been working in that.
Yeah.
I started working in the immersive web because I was supporting the Gear VR back in the day. And now our efforts are more focused on doing augmented reality through the handsets.
So coming back to Samsung Internet itself,
Yes.
maybe. What else can we say?
Let's talk about some of the priorities for our browser. Like, what
Okay.
are some things we really care about? So, we care about security and privacy. I think that's a huge one for us.
That's got to be one of the headline topics for Samsung Internet. So having strong privacy controls in the browser.
So smart anti-tracking.
Smart anti-tracking, which is our inbuilt tracking protection system.
Yeah.
Being able to switch on HTTPS everywhere.
That one's a really good one. I think that was a big win for us, getting that included in the browser, because that's really important, making sure that everyone's browsing is secured all the time.
Yeah.
And I think you can find the HTTPS everywhere support under labs.
It's under labs currently. It's going to be going more mainstream later in the year. And hopefully, I think it will be turned on by default as well, which is very good news. Yeah.
And we also have support for third-party content blockers.
That's right.
So you can currently turn on up to 5 at a time. And if you're on a non-Samsung Android device, you have to install them via the Play Store. But if you're on a Samsung device, you can just install them straight through the browser.
Yeah.
And so in a few seconds, you can start securing your browsing, making sure you don't see unwanted adverts, and making sure
tracked.
Yeah.
Getting tracked. Yeah.
Getting tracked.
Yeah. Progressive web apps.
That's a big one for us. So yeah, we are one of the actually one of the only 2 browsers on Android to support the Web APK API.
Right. And that is one of the Samsung-only features.
That is a Samsung-only feature.
Yeah.
So for those of you who aren't aware yet, Web APKs let you generate Android installables through the web from your progressive web app. So on a Samsung device, on Samsung Internet, if you go to add a website to your home screen or install it, it will generate its own APK for that website, and it will get all the benefits having an APK will do. So if you are a web app developer, like encouraging your users on Samsung devices use Samsung Internet is a great thing to do. It does fall back on normal Android devices to just doing what's essentially a bookmark, which goes into like full screen or standalone mode, which works very well.
Yeah, it still works, but the Web APK lets the progressive web apps be more of a first-class citizen on the device, which I really like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that also means, well, for both cases, you can make use of notifications. The web app can come up full screen. So it's been years since I've used any like native app for things like Twitter, for instance. I'm always purely on the progressive web app, and the feature parity is really, really good on that one in particular, but on many of them as well.
That's always my advice to like people who care about security is don't use apps.
Yeah.
Like if you can avoid it, just don't use native apps. Always try and use web apps, because then you can use the browser's like security features to try and prevent them from tracking you, which you can't do with apps. And it's really nice just being able to block ads inside of experiences where with a native app you wouldn't be able to do it.
Right.
Really nice.
So you're taking advantage of all of the protection that the browser gives you, and the security and privacy features and that kind of thing. So.
I think one final area I want to bring up that we really focus on is like accessibility features.
Yeah.
So like our dark mode support, we offer both the ability to support the dark mode features provided by a website using prefers color scheme. Thank you, Dan. And also, if you toggle that off, we also will algorithmically generate dark themes for websites, so you can choose whichever you prefer.
Yeah. And you can choose a font.
Yes, that's really powerful. So especially if you use a particular font to support your dyslexia on in your smartphone, you can also apply that same font throughout every web page on the browser. So you can toggle it on, and we'll replace all of the custom fonts with your system font.
Yeah.
Which is a great way to maintain a consistently accessible experience throughout your whole operating system and the web.
Yeah. I think other than that, there's people often ask us, I think, why does Samsung have a browser?
Oh yeah, that's actually, it does come up a lot.
I mean, we've talked about a lot of things just now that are kind of in answer to that question, but I think there are a lot of other, philosophically speaking, the web ecosystem is better with multiple browsers in it. And we know that from having worked in the web for
years,
decades.
And especially now I work in standards and I'm trying to actually ship APIs. An important part of that process is having multiple implementations of an API to ensure it works.
And multiple stakeholders in the process that are helping to guide it and shape it. The web is not of one single organization or company or country, and that is its strength. And in order to keep it that way, we need multiple browsers. So there is that factor. And then also from a Samsung perspective, having a browser allows us to make product decisions about what features we think are important for a browser, and what the look and feel of a browser should be.
And from like a purely cynical perspective, we can also we can unify the user interface of Samsung Internet with the massive improvements you get through the One UI experience.
Yeah.
And we can give a better experience on Samsung devices for people using Samsung Internet. I mean, that was originally one of the early reasons Samsung Internet was. So in the early days of Samsung Internet, it was a Samsung exclusive web browser because we wanted to give the better experience to Samsung users. And so it was kind of like a perk of using Samsung phones, you get this really cool web browser.
Right.
And so we really encourage Samsung to make it available everywhere so that people can test on it. But it does also mean that now everyone else gets a really good web browser too.
That's true. Yeah. And you'll find us in tech blogs that list top Android browsers. We're always in those lists because we are one of the best Android browsers out there.
Yeah, you'll have a great experience. So if you're hearing about Samsung Internet for the first time and you're a web developer, I really encourage downloading Samsung Internet, just for nothing else, testing your websites. But also, give it a go for a week as your daily driver web browser. See how you feel. Experience some of the ad blocking and tracking blocking. See what a more secure web is like, and see if you like it.
Yep. So what can we leave people with? Some URLs?
Yeah, I think,
I mean, this is the web we're talking about, right?
yeah, so I guess we'll put a link to Samsung Internet on the Play Store and the Galaxy Store.
Yeah, but it is galaxy.store/internet,
Oh yeah, that
Right.
takes you to both of them.
right? Or galaxy.store/internet beta.
And our page on the Samsung Internet developer site, so developer.samsung.com/internet,
That's right.
where you'll also find our blog as well.
Yeah, and a link to our Medium blog. We're on Medium, and as well as we reflect our blog posts on developer.samsung.com blog. We also tweet at Samsung Internet. That's an account that we maintain. So you're going to get raw kind of developer focused information out of that.
Yeah.
And where else are we?
We do occasionally post onto dev.to as well.
That's right. We have a dev.to channel. We're making more use of that. We're on LinkedIn. We try and put as much information on LinkedIn as we can. We
Yeah.
kind of reflect our blog posts there.
And obviously we're on YouTube where you're watching this now.
That's
so like and subscribe, etc., etc.
Yes. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much. I think that's everything.
Yeah.